The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport of the scout ship Elysium. Captain Leora Kane leaned against the control panel, her eyes scanning the nearby sector for anything unusual. The crew had been on routine patrol for days, and boredom had settled over them like a thick fog. Yet, even in the monotony of space, there was always the chance of the unexpected. "Captain, sensors are picking up an unidentified object," said Lieutenant Mara Voss, her fingers flying over the holographic display. Her voice carried a mixture of excitement and unease. "It's drifting. No identification. No energy signature. It's just there." Leora straightened, her curiosity instantly piqued. "Show me," she said, stepping closer. The image of a ship appeared in the holographic projection. Its hull was intact but worn, drifting silently in the blackness. Its design was unfamiliar, sleek and elongated, but it bore no insignia or markings. "Doesn't match anything in the registry," Mara murmured. "It's like it just appeared." Leora's mind raced. An abandoned ship in deep space was not unusual, but there was something about this one that felt different. "Prepare a boarding team," she ordered. "We are going in." As the scout team suited up and prepared their small craft for docking, a soft glow caught Leora's attention. Candles, flickering lights in the windows of the drifting vessel. She frowned. Candles did not belong on ships this far from any star system. There was no way they could burn for weeks, possibly months, in the vacuum of space. Yet the light danced gently, warm and inviting. Inside the dark cabins, the shuttle approached, and the team entered the airlock. The door hissed open, revealing the interior of the ship. It was silent, except for the faint hum of the airlock. The corridor stretched ahead, lit by soft candlelight that burned bright, despite the absence of any visible source of fuel. Shadows flickered along the walls, and the air smelled faintly of wax. "Keep your scanners active," Leora said, her voice calm but firm. She led the way, moving slowly, every sense alert. The corridors were immaculate, yet abandoned. Chairs were tucked under tables, personal items lay neatly arranged, and meal trays sat untouched. It was as if the crew had simply vanished, leaving their lives paused in perfect order. Lieutenant Voss paused, her hand hovering over her scanner. "Captain, there are no signs of life. But the candles, they're burning like someone lit them yesterday." Leora nodded, her brow furrowed. "We proceed carefully. There's something unusual about this place, and we need to understand it before we make any assumptions." The team moved deeper into the ship. Each cabin they passed told a story. Personal items were arranged with care, messages left in journals, and small artifacts of life scattered as if frozen in time. Leora felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if she were walking through a mirror of a world she might have known. In the captain's quarters, the scene became even more eerie. A large desk stood in the center of the room, papers neatly stacked, a holo display flickering weakly. On the bed, a blanket lay folded, and beside it, a small candle burned steadily. Leora reached out to touch the wax, expecting it to be cold. Instead, it felt warm to her fingers, as if alive. "This is impossible," Mara whispered. "There's no energy source. The candle shouldn't even exist in this environment." Leora shook her head, though she did not speak. Her mind raced. Something about the ship seemed almost alive. The air itself hummed with a quiet intelligence, subtle but undeniable. Doors that had been open now stood closed, the shadows moving with a purpose that was difficult to define. They continued their exploration, moving from cabin to cabin. Each room offered more questions than answers. A dining hall held tables set for meals never eaten, and a recreation room contained games that had clearly been played but left mid-session. The team could not find a single crew member. It was as if everyone had vanished in an instant. As they moved through the corridors, Leora noticed a pattern in the placement of the candles. Each was positioned carefully, in the center of the rooms or on desks and tables, as if to mark something important. She wondered if they were symbolic, a form of communication from those who had once inhabited this ship. Her thoughts were interrupted when Voss pointed to a wall. "Captain, look at this." Etched into the metal surface were faint marks, barely visible but unmistakable. They were logs, records left behind by the missing crew. Each line described daily routines, experiments, and observations. But then the logs stopped abruptly. No explanation, no warning, just silence. The crew gathered around, reading the entries in stunned silence. Leora's stomach tightened. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry. But everything else had been left untouched, preserved as if waiting for someone to arrive. "We need to find the main bridge," Leora said. "That's where we'll get the most answers. Something is guiding us, and I intend to find out what it is." The corridors twisted and turned, leading them to the heart of the ship. The bridge was unlike anything Leora had seen. It was circular, with panels and displays that glowed faintly, powered by some unknown energy. The main console was active, though dormant, and holographic projections shimmered like ghosts in the dim light. As Leora approached the central console, she felt a presence. Subtle, but undeniable. It was not threatening, yet it was aware of her. Aware of the crew. The candlelight seemed to respond, flickering brighter as she reached out to touch the console. "Captain, do you feel that?" Mara asked, her voice barely audible. Leora nodded. "Yes. It's as if the ship itself is alive. Or at least, it knows we are here." Suddenly, a soft voice echoed through the bridge. It was not spoken aloud, yet each member of the team heard it in their minds. "Who comes aboard?" the voice asked. Calm, questioning, almost gentle. Leora stepped forward, her hand resting on the console. "I am Captain Leora Kane, of the scout ship Elysium. We mean no harm. We are explorers, seeking knowledge." The ship remained silent for a moment, as if considering her words. Then, the flickering candles along the walls brightened, casting the room in a warm glow. The team exchanged glances, unsure of what to do next. "This is unprecedented," Mara whispered. "A sentient ship, and it's communicating with us through candles?" Leora took a deep breath. She felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Humanity had always reached into the unknown. And here, in the cold expanse of space, she felt that same spirit alive and burning. The ship, abandoned yet alive in some way, was a mystery waiting to be understood. "Prepare to document everything," she said. "This could be the most important discovery in human history." The crew nodded, their nerves taut but their resolve strong. Each member moved with care, capturing images, scanning systems, and recording observations. Yet, despite all their technology, the essence of the ship remained beyond comprehension, almost as if it were testing their intentions, their worthiness. Hours passed. The team moved from room to room, following the pattern of the candles, reading more logs, and piecing together the story of the missing crew. They learned that experiments had been conducted here, attempts to merge human consciousness with advanced AI. The records were incomplete, leaving more questions than answers. But the most unsettling part was the sense of presence, the feeling that the ship watched them, guided them, and observed their reactions. The candles, warm and alive, seemed to mark their path, leading them deeper into the heart of the vessel. By the time they returned to the airlock, exhaustion had set in, but curiosity burned brighter than ever. Leora looked back at the ship, its candles flickering in the darkness of space. She knew this was only the beginning. There were secrets here, truths about humanity and technology, waiting to be uncovered. As the shuttle detached and moved back toward the Elysium, the ship remained behind, silent once more, its candles continuing to burn, and in the hearts of the crew, a quiet understanding settled. Humanity had once again touched the edge of the unknown, and the unknown had responded not with hostility, but with curiosity and life of its own. The stars outside stretched endlessly, but for Captain Kane and her crew, the drifting ship with candles burning inside had become a new horizon, a challenge to explore, understand, and, perhaps, connect with. And somewhere, Deep inside the abandoned vessel, the soft glow of the candles pulsed gently, waiting for the next step, the next discovery, the next spark of human courage. The shuttle returned to the Elysium, but Captain Leora Kane could not stop thinking about the drifting ship. The glow of the candles had been more than a light. It had been a signal, a message, a presence that defied explanation. The crew busied themselves with scanning the ship remotely, but Leora's mind lingered on what they had left behind. The cabins frozen in time, the logs abruptly ending, and the feeling that someone or something was watching them. "This ship is unlike anything we've ever encountered," Lieutenant Mara Voss said, her eyes focused on the screens. "It's preserved itself perfectly, but there's more. Something in its patterns, in the candlelight." "It reacts," Leora nodded. "It's intelligent. Not in the way an AI normally is. It's aware, like it's observing our actions and judging our intentions." She paused, thinking, "We need to know why it's here and what happened to the crew. If we don't understand that, we can't make sense of this discovery." The crew debated their next step. Some suggested leaving the ship alone, recording what they could remotely. Others wanted to return immediately and explore further. Leora understood the tension. They were all human, vulnerable, yet curious. And curiosity had always been humanity's greatest strength. "We go back," she finally said. "We prepare a full boarding team, fully equipped. But we move carefully. This ship is not just abandoned. It's alive in a way we do not yet understand." The shuttle detached and approached the drifting vessel once more. As they neared the airlock, the candles were visible again, flickering gently as if greeting them. Leora felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had faced dangerous situations before, but nothing like this. This was unknown, and the unknown was always unpredictable. Once aboard, the crew moved more cautiously this time. Their sensors detected faint energy signatures, subtle and almost imperceptible, that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the flickering candles. Each cabin they entered was identical to what they had seen before, perfectly preserved, as if no time had passed at all. They reached the dining hall. The tables were set with plates and utensils, meals arranged in neat rows, yet the food was cold, untouched, and somehow fresh. Candles burned on each table, their flames bright, unyielding to the vacuum of space. Lieutenant Voss scanned the room. "It's impossible. There's no fuel, no energy source. And yet, it burns." She shook her head. "I don't understand it." Leora walked among the tables, studying the placement of the candles. "They mark something," she said quietly. "Look at the pattern. Every table, every corner, every log. It's deliberate. The ship is trying to communicate through them." The crew split into teams to explore further, documenting everything. In the sleeping quarters, they found journals and personal items left behind. Some pages were blank, others were filled with observations about experiments conducted on the ship. It became clear that the previous crew had been working on a project far beyond ordinary science attempts to merge human consciousness with artificial intelligence. Leora read a line aloud from one of the logs. "We are testing the limits of human thought. Soon, our minds may travel beyond the body, beyond time. But there is risk. Too much. And we may lose ourselves." She looked up at Mara. They stopped because they realized the danger. Something went wrong, and they vanished or were removed. But why leave the ship intact, the candles burning? As they moved deeper, they entered a section of the ship that felt different. The walls were smooth, metallic, yet seemed organic, almost like the inside of a living creature. The candles here burned brighter, and the air carried a faint hum, a vibration that resonated in their bones. "Captain, the ship," Mara said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's guiding us. It's almost like it knows where we need to go." Leora felt the same sensation. It was subtle at first, then undeniable. Every step they took felt predetermined. Every choice guided by something larger than themselves. And with each room they entered, The sense of presence grew stronger. They arrived at a hidden laboratory, the heart of the ship's mysteries. Here, advanced equipment hummed faintly, despite the main systems being offline. Holographic displays shimmered, showing schematics of experiments on consciousness transfer. Notes in the logs suggested the crew had been attempting to encode human thoughts into digital patterns, preserving their essence beyond physical death. Lieutenant Voss whispered, "They were trying to make themselves immortal. But why leave the candles burning?" Leora studied the logs and the holograms. The candles, they represent the crew. Each flame is a consciousness preserved in some way. They may have disappeared from the physical ship, but their essence remains. That's why the lights never go out. The ship is carrying them, like guardians of their memory. The team was silent, absorbing the revelation. The idea that human consciousness could endure beyond the body, preserved within a ship, was awe-inspiring and terrifying. Leora felt a mixture of fear and admiration. Humanity's drive to explore, to push limits, had reached far beyond what she had imagined. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed through the lab. It was not spoken aloud, yet each member of the team heard it in their minds. "Why do you enter?" it asked, calm but questioning. Leora stepped forward. "We seek knowledge," she said. "We mean no harm. We want to understand your purpose, and the fate of those who were here before us." There was a pause. Then the candles along the walls flickered in unison, casting a brilliant glow. The ship responded, not with words, but with light and presence. Leora realized the vessel was testing them, assessing whether their intentions were honorable. The crew continued exploring, discovering rooms filled with simulations of the missing crew's lives. Each holographic projection was a moment frozen in time. Meal preparations, conversations, daily routines, all preserved as if the people were still there. The candles seemed to hover near these projections, emphasizing their significance. As the team examined the simulations, they began to experience visions, memories of loved ones, fleeting emotions, and whispers of conversations long past. Some crew members felt fear, others comfort. It was as if the ship was offering glimpses into the essence of humanity itself, connecting the visitors with what it had preserved. Leora felt a hand on her shoulder. Mara looked at her, eyes wide. "It's showing us not just what happened, but who we are. Humanity. Our curiosity. Our courage. Our capacity to care. That's what it recognizes." The realization hit Leora. This ship was more than a vessel. It was a guardian, a preserver, and a teacher. It had kept the crew's consciousness alive, using the candles as markers, and now it was sharing a lesson with those who dared to enter. Hours passed, yet time seemed different inside the ship. When they returned to the bridge, the console displayed faint images of the missing crew. Leora approached, placing her hand on the interface. She felt a connection, a thread of consciousness reaching out to her. The crew's thoughts were clear. They had attempted something extraordinary, and the ship had become their protector, ensuring that their work and their essence would not be lost. But the ship also tested the crew. Some members were drawn to the idea of merging with the preserved consciousness, tempted by the possibility of extending their own minds beyond the body. Leora watched carefully, sensing the subtle shift in their expressions. The pull of ambition. Humanity's strength lay not only in knowledge, but in the choices they made when faced with power. "Captain," Mara said, her voice hesitant. "Some of the crew. They want to stay. They want to join them. To become part of the ship." Leora's eyes hardened. "We are explorers, not passengers in someone else's legacy. Our role is to understand, to respect, and to bring knowledge back. That is our humanity. We do not abandon our choices or our ethics, even in the face of greatness." The ship responded again, its presence surrounding them. The candles flared brighter, almost in acknowledgement. Leora realized that the vessel was testing them, not just observing, but learning from them as well. Humanity's essence was being judged not by strength or technology, but by morality, courage, and compassion. By the time they returned to the airlock, the team was exhausted, yet exhilarated. They had seen something beyond imagination. An abandoned ship that carried the memories, lives, and hopes of a vanished crew, and in doing so, they had glimpsed the power of human curiosity and determination. As the shuttle detached and moved back toward the Elysium, Leora looked once more at the drifting ship. Its candles continued to burn. Unwavering in the cold emptiness of space, she felt a quiet reverence. Humanity had once again reached into the unknown, and the unknown had responded, offering knowledge, connection, and understanding. The team remained silent, each lost in their own thoughts. They had been tested, inspired, and reminded of the resilience and strength that defined humanity. The ship had shown them that even in the absence of life, purpose could endure, and consciousness could persist in forms beyond imagination. Leora turned to her crew. "We must document everything," she said, her voice steady. "This knowledge, these discoveries, they are our responsibility. Humanity must learn from what we have seen, and we must return to tell the story." The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, but inside the crew, a new light burned brighter than any candle. It was the light of understanding, of connection, and of hope. And as they charted a course back to the Elysium, Leora knew this was only the beginning. The drifting ship, with candles burning inside, had shared a glimpse of what humanity could achieve, and it was up to them to carry that lesson forward. In the depths of space, the ship remained, its candles glowing softly. It waited patiently, preserving its silent guardians, ready for the next explorers who would dare to enter, to observe, and to understand. And somewhere within that gentle, unwavering light, the legacy of humanity's curiosity and courage continued to grow. Captain Leora Kane stood at the viewport of the shuttle, staring at the drifting ship. Its candles glowed gently, unwavering against the vast emptiness of space. The presence of the vessel weighed on her mind. It was no longer just an abandoned ship they had discovered, that it was something more, aware, alive in ways they could barely understand. Humanity's curiosity had drawn them close, and now the real test had begun. "Captain," Lieutenant Maravas said, breaking the silence. "The ship, it's reacting to us again. I think it wants something from you. I don't know what, but it's focused." Leora nodded, her thoughts racing. The previous visit had given them knowledge and insight, but the ship had tested them subtly. She had felt it in the warmth of the candles, in the echoes of the logs, and in the gentle pull guiding their steps. This time, she sensed, the interaction would be personal. The shuttle docked once more, and the crew entered the ship. They moved with care, documenting, scanning, observing. Yet everything seemed quieter this time, almost reverent. The corridors were the same, preserved perfectly, yet there was an undeniable sense of anticipation in the air. The team reached the bridge, and as Leora stepped forward, the console glowed softly. Holographic images flickered to life, showing faces of the missing crew. They were frozen in their final moments, yet their expressions carried purpose, focus, and hope. The candles along the walls flickered in unison, almost like eyes observing, waiting for Leora's choice. A soft voice filled the bridge, not audible, but clear in her mind. "You have returned." "Why?" Leora placed her hand on the console. "We seek to understand. We are explorers. We want to learn from those who came before, and we mean no harm." The voice paused. Then, as if responding to her intentions, the candles flared brighter. Leora felt a warmth spread through her body. The ship was testing her, probing her mind, and judging the choices she would make. It was not just asking about knowledge, it was asking about humanity. Suddenly, visions appeared in her mind. She saw moments from the ship's past. The crew working tirelessly on experiments, discussions about consciousness, and the decision to preserve themselves within the vessel. She felt their hopes, fears, and doubts. It was overwhelming, but Leora held her focus. She understood that these were the people who had created something extraordinary, and the ship had become their guardian. One of her crew, a young scientist named Jaren, stepped forward. "Captain, I think I understand. The ship is offering us a choice. We could join them. Our minds could be preserved, like theirs." Leora turned to him, her eyes firm. "That is not our path. Humanity's strength is not in escaping mortality or merging with machines. Our strength is in the choices we make, the courage we show, and the lives we touch. We do not abandon our ethics for convenience." Jaren hesitated, torn. The allure of immortality and infinite knowledge was strong. The candles seemed to call to him, representing something beyond human limits. Other crew members glanced at the flames with longing, imagining the possibility. The ship responded to their thoughts, the candles flickering brighter or dimmer, reflecting the inner struggles of those aboard. Leora realized that this was more than a test. It was a reflection of human nature, magnified by the ship's intelligence. It sought to see what humanity was capable of when confronted with power, temptation, and the unknown. Leora stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We come in peace. We respect the lives preserved here, and we honor them. But we will not surrender our humanity for the sake of curiosity or ambition. That is what defines us. That is what makes us human." The ship responded again, but this time differently. The holographic images shifted, showing the preserved crew in moments of joy, collaboration, and discovery. The candles pulsed softly, as if acknowledging her words. Leora felt a connection, not just to the ship, but to the people whose lives it preserved. Yet the challenge was not over. One crew member, Tarek, attempted to interface with the console directly, trying to override the ship's systems. "Think of what we could learn," he said. "We could advance humanity beyond imagination." Leora moved quickly, placing herself between him and the console. "That is not the way," she said. "Knowledge without responsibility is dangerous. You would risk everything for ambition. And that is not the lesson the ship is offering." The candles flickered violently, and a low hum filled the bridge. The ship's presence was testing them, pushing them to their limits. Leora realized that it sought to challenge not just their understanding, but their ethics, their choices, and their unity as a team. Jaren stepped back, his expression conflicted, and Tarek's attempts faltered. The crew collectively recognized that the ship was not an enemy. It was a guide, a mirror, and a teacher. It reflected humanity's strengths and weaknesses, showing them that courage, morality, and empathy were as important as intellect or ambition. Leora reached out once more, placing her hand on the console. She felt the ship's consciousness respond, warm and patient. It communicated not in words, but in feelings and images. She saw the preserved crew again, each candle representing a life, a thought, a choice, and she understood the message clearly. Humanity's value lay not in escaping limits, but in choosing wisely, in facing the unknown with integrity. The ship pulsed, the candles flaring bright one final time. A holographic map appeared, showing distant sectors of space, uncharted and full of possibilities. The ship was offering guidance, sharing knowledge, but it required discernment. It tested the crew not to dominate them, but to see if they could rise to the challenge with wisdom and compassion. Leora turned to her crew. "This is what we were meant to learn. The ship is not a prize to be claimed or a tool to be used. It is a lesson. We preserve our curiosity, our courage, and our morality. And in doing so, we honor those who came before us." The crew nodded, a quiet resolve settling over them. Even those who had been tempted by the allure of merging with the preserved consciousness now understood. They had faced a trial, and their choices had proven their humanity. Hours passed, and the exploration continued. The ship guided them to archives, recording methods of preserving consciousness safely, documenting experiments, and leaving insights into the nature of intelligence and awareness. Every candle seemed to mark an important point. A life preserved, a choice made. The team absorbed the information, careful to respect the ship's guidance. At one point, Leora paused in a small cabin, watching a single candle flicker on a desk. She felt the presence of the person it represented, sensing their curiosity, their hope, their courage. "We are here because of you," she whispered. "Your choices, your lives, your spirit. They guide us now." The ship responded with a soft, almost imperceptible vibration, a signal of acknowledgement. The warmth of the candles filled the room, and Leora felt a sense of unity, a connection across time and space, linking the living and the preserved. Tarek, who had been restless, finally spoke. "I see it now. It's not about control or power. It's about understanding, and about the choices we make when faced with the unknown." Leora nodded. "Exactly. Knowledge without wisdom is meaningless. Humanity's strength is not in domination, but in courage, empathy, and integrity. That is what this ship has preserved, and that is what we carry forward." As the shuttle prepared to leave the ship once again, the crew gathered on the bridge. The candles continued to burn softly, their light unwavering. Leora took one last look at the vessel, understanding its purpose. It was a guardian, a teacher, a preserver of the best of humanity, and it had tested them to ensure that the spirit of humanity remained strong. The shuttle detached, and the ship drifted silently in space, candles glowing in the darkness. Leora felt a sense of peace. They had faced the challenge, learned the lessons, and preserved the integrity of their species. Humanity had once again proven its strength, not through technology or force, but through courage, wisdom, and morality. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, but inside the crew, a quiet light burned brightly. It was the flame of understanding, the knowledge that humanity could face the unknown with honor and hope. And as the Elysium charted its course back, Leora knew that the lessons of the drifting ship would guide them for the rest of their lives. Somewhere within that silent vessel, the candles flickered gently, marking lives preserved, knowledge safeguarded, and a legacy of humanity's courage. And in that light, Leora Kane and her crew understood something profound. The strength of humanity was not in what they could conquer, but in what they could choose to preserve, protect, and honor. The drifting ship waited patiently, its candles burning softly, ready to guide the next explorers who would approach with curiosity, respect, and courage. And humanity, in its endless quest for understanding, had proven it was ready to meet the challenge. The shuttle hummed softly as it moved away from the drifting ship. Captain Leora Kane sat at the viewport, her hands clasped together, her mind replaying everything they had seen. The candles burned steadily inside the vessel, small beacons of light against the endless dark of space. Each flame represented a life, a consciousness preserved beyond physical limits, a lesson for those who dared to explore. Lieutenant Mara Voss broke the silence. "Captain, we've scanned everything we can. The ship's systems are mostly dormant now, but its essence, it lingers. I think it understood our choices." Leora nodded slowly. "Yes, it tested us, observed us, and responded to what it found. And in doing so, it taught us something important, not just about technology or consciousness, but about humanity itself." Jaren, who had been quiet since the last encounter, finally spoke. "I never imagined anything like this. It's like the crew lives on. In a way, they became the ship. Their knowledge, their thoughts, their spirit all preserved, guiding us, and it respected our choices." The shuttle's small cabin was filled with a quiet reverence. The crew understood they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that transcended ordinary exploration. It was not just a discovery of advanced technology or a mysterious ship, it was an encounter that reflected the best of humanity, tested them, and strengthened their resolve. Leora's mind returned to the lessons of the vessel. Humanity's power was not measured by tools or machines, but by courage, morality, and the choices made when confronted with the unknown. The ship had preserved its own creators, yes, But it had also sought to see if those who followed could uphold the same virtues. "Captain," Mara said softly, "do you think anyone will believe this? That we found a ship that holds preserved human consciousness, that tests morality, and guides humanity?" And Leora smiled faintly. "Some may doubt it. But that doesn't matter. What matters is what we learned, what we carry forward. Knowledge has power only when it is used wisely, and experience has meaning only when it shapes future choices. We carry both now." The shuttle's path led them back to the Elysium, their mothership. As they prepared to dock, Leora felt a quiet pull in her chest, a sense that the drifting ship was not merely behind them but still connected to them, in some intangible way. The candles inside it seemed to glow even brighter in her memory, symbolic of resilience, courage, and the human spirit. Once aboard the Elysium, the crew began cataloging their findings. They recorded every detail: the preserved cabins, the holographic projections, the logs, and the patterns of the candles. They documented the ship's intelligence, the subtle interactions, and the lessons it imparted. The process was painstaking, but each entry strengthened their understanding. Hours turned into days. The shuttle returned for additional scans, capturing even the faintest anomalies and residual energy patterns. Leora led her team through the archives, analyzing the preserved data. The ship's experiments on consciousness were groundbreaking, yet they were handled ethically by the original crew. Leora realized that humanity's potential was vast, but its morality would always determine the outcome of its greatest endeavors. In the quiet of the observation deck, Leora reflected on the ethical challenges the crew had faced. Jaren had been tempted by the allure of merging with the preserved consciousness. Tarek had nearly attempted to seize control, yet they had chosen integrity over ambition. Humanity had been tested, and it had passed. She felt a quiet pride in them, in their courage, and in the choices they had made. The Elysium continued its journey through deep space. Leora looked out at the stars and considered the drifting ship. Its purpose had been fulfilled, yet it remained, quietly burning its candles, awaiting the next explorers who might approach with curiosity, respect, and courage. It had preserved lives and lessons, and it had tested those who followed, ensuring that humanity's spirit remained strong. A soft alert interrupted her thoughts. Mara approached, holding a small data module. "Captain, this was hidden in one of the ship's archives. It's an advanced map of nearby sectors, uncharted areas, and locations of interest. The ship left it for us. It wants us to continue exploration." Leora accepted the module, examining the holographic projections. It was a gift, a guide, and a challenge. Humanity had been given knowledge, yes, but also responsibility. The drifting ship had tested them, taught them, and now entrusted them with a mission: to explore, to learn, and to uphold the virtues that defined their species. "Prepare the crew," Leora said. "We chart a course for these sectors. We proceed with caution, respect, and courage. This is more than exploration. It's a continuation of the lesson we've received." The crew moved quickly, energized by purpose. They prepared instruments, recalibrated sensors, and reviewed the ship's archives once more. Each member carried the memory of the candles, the preserved lives, and the trials they had faced. They understood that the path ahead was not merely about discovery, but about upholding the values that had guided humanity to this point. As the Elysium moved into the uncharted sectors, the drifting ship appeared in their view screens one last time. Its candles glowed steadily, a beacon in the darkness, silent yet alive. Leora felt a connection to it, a shared understanding. The ship had tested them, guided them, and now stood as a symbol of the potential that humanity carried within itself: curiosity, courage, morality, and perseverance. Days passed, and the crew continued their journey. Every new sector presented challenges, strange anomalies, and opportunities for discovery. Yet through it all, the lessons of the drifting ship remained with them. The candles had not merely marked the preserved lives, they had illuminated the path forward. reminding humanity that the greatest achievements were guided by wisdom and ethics, not just knowledge. In moments of quiet, Leora would return to the observation deck, gazing at the stars, thinking of the drifting ship. She imagined the crew it preserved, their spirits lingering in the warmth of the candles. It was a reminder that even in the vast emptiness of space, life, courage, and morality endured. Humanity had faced a test and emerged stronger, ready to continue its journey among the stars. One evening, as the Elysium passed through a particularly dark and distant sector, a faint signal appeared on the sensors. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. Leora leaned forward, her pulse quickening. The signal originated from a distant point, aligned with one of the coordinates from the drifting ship's archive. It was a new challenge, a new opportunity. "Captain," Mara said, pointing at the readings, "this could be another ship, or something else entirely. The drifting vessel left this for us. It wants us to explore, to continue the lessons it began." Leora nodded, determination in her eyes. "Set a course. We proceed with care, respect, and courage. Humanity's spirit will guide us." As the Elysium accelerated toward the unknown, the crew felt a sense of purpose, unlike anything before. They were explorers, yes, but also guardians of the lessons learned, carriers of knowledge, and bearers of humanity's enduring values. The drifting ship, with its candles burning softly behind them, had changed everything. It had shown them the potential of human courage, the importance of ethics, and the power of curiosity. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with risks and unknowns, yet the crew faced it with confidence. They had been tested and had passed. Humanity's essence, its bravery, morality, and spirit would guide them through whatever challenges awaited. And in the vast darkness of space, the drifting ship remained, its candles burning, waiting patiently. It had preserved lives, tested courage, and passed on wisdom. And it would continue to wait, quietly, for the next explorers who would approach with curiosity, respect, and the same courage that defined humanity. The stars stretched endlessly, and the Elysium moved steadily forward. Captain Leora Kane stood at the helm, feeling the weight of responsibility, the thrill of discovery, and the pride of knowing that humanity had risen to the challenge. The candles, though far behind them, had lit a path of knowledge, morality, and hope. Humanity had been tested in the cold, silent void of space, and it had proven its strength. Not through power, not through domination, but through courage, wisdom, and the choices it made when faced with the unknown. And that, Leora realized, was the greatest legacy of all. The drifting ship faded from view, yet its lessons endured. The crew of the Elysium carried them forward into the uncharted reaches of the galaxy, prepared to face whatever awaited, guided by the light of the candles, the preserved spirit of those who came before, and the enduring strength of humanity itself.